The Let Kashmir Decide movement is bringing to you a brand new show on JKTV where you will get the latest updates and analysis into the situation in Indian Occupied Kashmir.
Modi and the Indian government want the world to believe that all is well in Indian Occupied Kashmir, but that is decidedly not the case. Join us and different guests every Thursday for insight into the latest developments in the Kashmiri freedom struggle.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us here tonight. My name is Claire Bidwell. I'm a human rights activist, primary school teacher from Scotland, and I'm here as usual with Mary Scully, a political writer and human rights activist from the USA. And our guest tonight is Tanveer Ahmed from AJK, a British reporter, researcher and activist. Good evening, Mary. How are you tonight? Are you well?
Good evening to you, Tanveer.
Happy to hear that. And Tanveer, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure for us. So we bring, as best as we can each week, events that have happened in Indian Occupied Kashmir, specifically insights into that, but a discussion of everything that's going on. So one of the things that's been concerning us is the activities within the youth, various different ones. We were alerted recently via one of your blogs to the young lad, I think his name, you might have to correct me, but it was Aslam. What was his name, Tanveer? Sorry.
Asmad Aslam.
Asmad Aslam, thank you, who wandered across the line of control and is still in police custody. I believe it's been about a month. We will discuss it with you. You'll be able to share that. So that's quite concerning that this young lad who lived close to the line of control has crossed it. We've seen footage and evidence of that. So we'll be looking forward to hearing about that. And Mary, I think possibly discussing some of the use and the fake encounters. But I'm going to hand it over to you to chat with Tanveer and see what insight and analysis we can find out this week on what's going on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Tanveer, we would like to start by asking you if you could tell us something about yourself, what your background is, what you do, how you got involved in human rights activism, and what the character of your human rights work is, just so people know something about who you are.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much to both Claire and you, Mary, for asking me to participate in this very important discussion. I would say very briefly that I was born here, where I am, in a place called Sensa, which is a subdivision of District Kotli, which is one of the 10 districts of AJK. And I was born here, and I went to England at the age of 4 and returned here for the first time when I was 15. And when I returned here for the first time, I understood that I had some kind of shared or divided heritage between this part of Jammu and Kashmir and that part, namely the Indian administered and the Pakistani administered, if we use neutral or language that is used by most international media or international academia. Of course, it's a very highly contested territory, and there are various narratives that compete with each other, and usually is a sense of table tennis that we see being played out, and which ultimately creates a problem for the people living here. So when I was 15, I was able to visit this side where I was born. And then when I found out about my heritage, I returned to England, and the following year, after finishing my GCSEs, I took a year out and I visited the other side of Jammu and Kashmir. And I initially went to Srinagar with my father and his friends. And I did feel that the heavy Indian military presence there, that was 1989, when I was 17 years old. I felt the very heavy Indian military presence was something which the local people there obviously had issue with. And at that time, many of them were preparing to cross over to this side and to get training, and then to come back and, you know, fight militarily with the Indians. I saw that part of the Jammu Kashmir jigsaw, and then when I came to the other parts of Jammu Kashmir controlled by the Indians, namely the Jammu region, I came across many Hindu and Sikh people who originated from this side, you know, our side, the Pakistani controlled side of Jammu and Kashmir, and they, you know, left this territory in 1947. They ran for their lives, and you know, there were massacres that took place here, and then, of course, there were massacres of many Muslims that took part, especially in Jammu, and people from there had to flee to this side or to parts of Pakistan. So I understood that there was tragedy from every side, and that gave me a sense of balance from a very early age, and because I was part of a divided family, and the particular person that was divided was my maternal grandmother, who originated from a different religion, and many of her family had left this side and gone to the other side. You know, things that happen at a very young age, things that I was able to observe at a very young age, left a very lasting impression on me. And it took me many years until 2005 to finally convince my family that I should try and get my Nani, my maternal grandmother, to reunite with her family on the other side. And that's when the saga starts. I was initially refused a visa by the Indian authorities, and there wasn't much that the Pakistanis could do either, because I mean, both countries do play this tit for tat. You will find that you know, many Indians are prevented from visiting Pakistan, and there are many Pakistanis that are prevented from visiting India. The amount of movement between India and Pakistan since 1947 has also been very restricted, and the restrictions on people moving about across Jammu and Kashmir was even more stricter. In fact, I even learnt very bizarrely that it was relatively easier for somebody living in Pakistan to get an Indian visa than it was for someone from Azad Jammu and Kashmir or from Gilgit-Baltistan to get a visa for India, which was something really bizarre, you know, that I learned. I suppose it is probably the same. It was probably relatively easier for Indians to get a visa to come to Pakistan than it was for people from that side of Jammu and Kashmir to get a Pakistani visa. So I've been witnessing a lot of table tennis, you know, from a very young age. And it does not mean that the people who live in this territory are not at fault. We are. You know, the people who are under suppression of whatever kind, you know, there is always a role, there's always an instrumental role that those people who are suffering can play. I hope you can hear me, although my picture has frozen, but I'm assuming you can hear me. No?
I can hear you, Tanveer.
Right. So okay. So irrespective of the fact that the picture is frozen, I'll continue speaking. So in my introduction, I'll try to complete that and say that. So since 2005, I've been here, and I always knew that you know, I cannot take this as a personal struggle of reunification. It's something that I have to widen out. It's something that I have to feel the same pain that I feel for my own divided family. I have to feel the same pain for all the other people who've been divided. So I kind of automatically transitioned from something that was a personal ambition to something that was of public significance. And it's been a long journey since 2005. I'm still here. I haven't left this territory. And I'm very, very concerned about people on this side as well as that side, for people throughout Jammu and Kashmir. And I also have a feeling for the people of Pakistan, the people of India, because I sincerely feel that there is a lot that can be done through the means of the people of this territory getting their freedom, and that can have a very positive impact on many aspects of the normal Indian and Pakistani person's lives. And that's something that motivates me, because we're talking about over 1.5 billion people. We're talking possibly almost a quarter of the world's population. So in terms of what you asked me about, what is my work ranged from, I think I can divide it into 4 parts. One is what I call security, which involves many things related to law and order, human rights violations, and other forms of rights that are being denied. Secondly, about governance, and of course, governance is also a very wide topic. The third is the economy, because you can't deliver anything for people if you don't have an economic structure, an economic plan to relieve people's problems. And fourthly, what is most important in many ways, and what can unlock all these problems that we've been stuck with for the past 75 years, is culture. So my work, it ranges from security to governance to the economy to culture. Sorry, that may have been a bit of a long introduction, but I hope there's something there.
No,
I hope there's something there. Right.
Yes, thank you very much. Claire and I were really struck with your blog post about the young man, the young 14-year-old boy who crossed the line of control from Azad into Kashmir and was arrested by Indian forces and remains since the end of November, in police custody. We were wondering if you could, first of all, talk about that case, but what we would like you to elaborate on is the entire issue of the arrest by Indian forces of these young boys, very young men, under the Public Safety Act, where they can be held indefinitely without charge. And so if you would start with the case of this young boy, Asmad Aslam, and then put it in the context of the political prisoners, all of these young boys. And, give us some insights into the problem of these young kids who are arrested. How many, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Asmad Aslam, a 14-year-old boy, he drifted off. He lives right on the LOC. I have a video in a Twitter feed I just happened to be at that place about 9 or so days before this incident, and I happened to capture his house in my camera. And that house is one of the last houses along a row of houses that are right on the LOC. I mean, the LOC is in their back garden, if I can use that term, to give you a sort of a British metaphor. I mean, he's been living there from a very young age. His maternal grandmother has been looking after him. There have been certain tragedies within that family. So the poor boy has already seen a lot, and he wandered across, and he was very soon picked up by the Indian Army, and then the Indian Army took him to Punch town, which was just a few kilometers away from the LOC. And the last we saw of him was a video, which I also shared on my blog, made by a media channel across the LOC, Gulistan News, to be precise. And so we know that he's in custody of either the police or the army. Things are not clear yet. I have spoken to people on the other side, some prominent journalists and some other people who are close to the Indian establishment, and we've also made contacts with the officials representing the Indian state. So we're still looking for a good, positive response from them. The information that I got offhand is that they were taking the little child through some investigation to establish his origins and his purpose for coming across there, and that he would be returned very soon. And I hope that is the case, and I hope he is returned. Now, the second part of the question that you put to me, of course, part of the tragedy of Jammu and Kashmir is that, the Indians don't like criticism being targeted at them, and it's very similar with the Pakistanis. I mean, there may well be certain things that the Pakistanis and the Indians may be doing positively, but it does not mean that they are not engaged in negative things. And there is a human rights record on that side to be scrutinized. And many young children, especially since the 5th of August 2019, have been picked up by Indian forces. And if you go back to 2010, when there were mass peaceful protests in the Valley of Kashmir at that time as well, we also saw then that young children, were incarcerated. Jammu Kashmir is such a contested territory that nobody is immune from it. Women, children, old men, old people. Nobody's immune. Everybody. There may be firing taking place. There may be some commotion taking place somewhere. And wherever this firing, or wherever this commotion takes place, whether it's in the form of, a militancy type gunfight, or whether it's mass mobilization of people protesting, everybody comes under the microscope, and it usually happens that people who are innocent, or people that may not have so much to do with the instigation of whatever takes place, whether it's peaceful or non-peaceful, usually people suffer. And of course, there are children who do get incarcerated. Figures are very hard to collect. I mean, a very important person who's doing work on this is, of course, Khurram Parvez, who we know is, of course, is in incarceration at the moment. People there have done very intensive human rights work. They've managed. People like Khurram Parvez were able to engage notable Indian academics like Anjana Chatterjee, who's also in the USA, as far as I know. Jammu Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society, I think that is also something that has a lot to do with the work of Khurram Parvez. So the people who can give you authentic information, the people who have done proper research on these matters are also incarcerated. I'm looking at things from this side, and of course, living here on this side, it is my moral obligation to cover things here, because I have access to things here. And as far as matters on the Indian control side or the Indian occupied side are concerned, it is for us to enable people on the ground there to be able to talk openly and to be able to talk genuinely and authentically about that region. And sometimes, when someone criticizes the Indian state on that side, they're very likely to go to jail when a push comes to shove, and it's the same on this side as well. There's a difference in intensity, and the contest between India and Pakistan has always consistently been far more intense in the Kashmir Valley, and therefore you will find that matters there have always consistently been a lot more severe than they have been on this side. People on this side have kind of taken the cue or taken a warning or taken lessons that if we protest or if we rise up against the Pakistani state like our people do on the other side, then we'll also come under the same problem. So people here are generally a bit more cautious, and propaganda plays a big part too. I mean, just a few days ago, I was on a web channel which is run by people from the Kashmir Valley, but it operates on a very clearly pro-Indian narrative. So the very same things that the Pakistanis talk about on the other side, it's the same thing. It's tit for tat. It's table tennis. On that side. So while you've got people here criticizing the Indians very heavily, you've got people on that side criticizing the Pakistanis heavily, and things get lost in propaganda. I mean, propaganda is usually about half truths. I mean, maybe what Pakistan says about India is half true. Maybe what India says about Pakistan is also half true. But the half the truth that is not being said by Pakistan or is not being said by India is where the actual problem is. And I think the people in this territory, throughout Jammu and Kashmir, one of the problems we have is that we have what I describe as a great democratic deficit in our behavior. If you go to America or if you go to Britain or any other developed democracy, you will always find space for different opinions to coexist and to sit in one discussion. What you will find here is that it's not like that. If you're in an environment, for example, in Indian control or Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, if you don't toe the Indian narrative, you'll be non-platformed. And it's similar on this side. If you don't toe the Pakistani narrative, you'll be non-platformed, irrespective of how authentic your words are. And then whatever narrative you espouse, the people who don't agree with that narrative will try and assassinate your character. They will try all kinds of things to try and demean your work. And we see this across social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. We see this real big contest, between Indian and Pakistani propaganda, and the real thing, doesn't come out. If you look at the index of press freedom throughout the world, if you look at even Freedom House, which is a very notable American organization, which measures the level of democracy or the level of human rights in various places. So both the Indian controlled Jammu and Kashmir and the Pakistani controlled Jammu and Kashmir, lack very severely. They come very, very low, in the table of countries, with respect to freedom. And you find this across various human rights organizations that have done intensive work on the Indian side, and those who have done intensive work on this side. Human Rights Watch is, again, a very notable human rights organization based in New York. They've done work on both sides, and Amnesty International has done a lot of work on the Indian side. Amnesty is, of course, something which is mainly based or has its main offices in the UK. So the original voice, the internal narrative, needs to come out, irrespective of how much sympathy that may have for the Indians or for the Pakistanis. And the people themselves, they need to start tolerating each other. I tell my people that you don't tolerate each other's views how on earth do you expect the world to take you seriously? You know, and if you're speaking for the whole territory of Jammu and Kashmir, you've got to understand what the people of the Valley of Kashmir want. You can't just write them out. You know, you can't write out the people of Jammu. You can't write out the people of Ladakh, of Gilgit-Baltistan, of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. You know, everybody should have equal space to explain and to communicate what is their narrative, what are their concerns.
I think we've said before, haven't we, that even within this, it's the Indian people, you know, within we're all, as you say, we're all on this earth together. The only way this is all going to get solved is together. So we have to work our way through everyone. Tanveer, somebody put up a question and they were saying, can they hold children indefinitely in these jails? Is it the same for the adults? Do you know what the situation is for the children?
Well, as far as this boy Asmad Aslam is concerned, you know, he wasn't involved in some kind of protest in front of you know, the Indian Army or the Indian controlled police. He wasn't involved in any kind of aggressive action against the Indians. So I don't think there are any grounds, and this has been intimated to the Indians, that there are no grounds, there's no scope for even any kind of suspicion whatsoever about this child. So, I mean, he should be returned. There should be a difference, and of course, various universal norms throughout the world do make a very clear distinction between children and adults. I think the Indians, I mean, the Indians won't like this, but of course, you know, there have been examples of children on that side also being incarcerated and reprimanded. How many children still remain? I mean, I'm not clear, but it's something which you know, does need to be addressed.
I'm glad that you brought up that the work of the Jammu Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society and Karim Parvez were really central to the reports and the investigation of these children and young men who were arrested under the Public Safety Act, because it's very notable that since August 2019, when there has been a crackdown on journalists, human rights activists and organizations, and other protests, it's very noticeable that the information available about the arrest of these young people is very unclear and very contradictory. It's not certain how many have been arrested. It's not certain how many have been released. It's not certain if they've been lost in the Indian prison system. There was a report not long after August 2019 that the Indian government claimed to have released some of these young children, and yet the families had not received them and they didn't know where their kids were. So none of that information is available or clear right now. We don't know how many kids are still in custody, how many, if children are being tortured as the JKCCS reported in the past. We don't know any of that information and are not likely to now that there is such a crackdown on Karim Parvez and his organization of activists. So it's a very disturbing thing, because these children could be lost, could be lost, could be even not just lost in the prison system, but disappeared, forcibly disappeared. So I wonder if you could comment on that. It's an issue of great concern to people who care about not just Kashmiri freedom, but about child welfare.
Yes.
Kind of children.
Yeah, absolutely. There, of course, there is a very deliberate lack of transparency in these matters, and one of the problems is that the Indians, describe this as an internal issue. And of course, it is not internal. I mean, I remember once Imran Hussain, an MP in the UK from Bradford, I think, he mentioned in the recent discussion on Kashmir in the Parliament that when it comes to human rights, it's not something local or internal. It's something which is universal. That is the case. Now the thing is that when those people who are actually logging these things and trying to make these things transparent, when they are also incarcerated, like the case with Khurram Parvez, then it does make things a lot more complicated. Now, an important thing to mention at this juncture is that when we're looking to resolve matters which are of such humanitarian significance, like children being incarcerated, we have to look practically. I mean, how ready is the world? I know that outrage is shown by the world, all well-meaning people throughout the world. When they learn of these things, they do express their outrage. But on a practical level, what is there that can be done in order to retrieve those children and to bring transparency into these matters? And I think that's where countries like Britain and America can play an important role, because, look, if you're in Britain or in America and you raise your voice for some just cause, more than likely 99% of the time, you won't be reprimanded and you won't be imprisoned for your views or for your activism. But when you do something similar in Indian-controlled Jammu and Kashmir or in Pakistani-controlled Jammu and Kashmir, you're likely to be reprimanded, censored. You're likely to be incarcerated. So I think that when I talk about America and about Britain, it's not always so much I'm talking about the states, because all states have certain characteristics throughout the world. It's about the vibrant civil society. American people and British people, if they want, if they are intent enough, they can hold their own governments accountable, because such traditions, such culture, and such institutions exist in both countries. So one important thing is to try to see Jammu and Kashmir as something, because it's such a heavily contested territory, because is what I describe as the most valuable territory in the world. There's been more military presence consistently in this territory, both in length of time and in number, since 1947 till now. You cannot compare this military presence to any other presence anywhere in the world at any point in history, right? If you start counting the Indian armed forces, the Pakistani armed forces, the Chinese, and then the UN military observer group, all these entities, all these four entities that are here, there's no such such a high level of military presence for a prolonged period of time anywhere else in the world. So I think the world needs to look at this region as some kind of a universal or world heritage. I mean, it's water. I mean, water belongs to everybody. Everybody needs water. And there's a natural slope running down from Jammu and Kashmir into India and into Pakistan. And both countries are not honest in their reasoning for wanting to control this territory. I mean, the Indians say that we're secular and we want to prove that by having a majority Muslim state as part of our federation, we will be proving that we are secular. And the Pakistanis, on the other hand, say that because it's a Muslim majority territory, it needs to be with us, right? So both these reasons given by India and by Pakistan are disingenuous, because they both here for the water resources, by controlling the water resources, they're ensuring a safe flow. I mean, if you look at water crises throughout the world, I mean, look at Iraq today. Iraq is a dying country because the water slopes coming from the north are obviously being taken advantage of those people who are closer to the source of that water, right? So there's less water coming down into middle Iraq and southern Iraq. Okay, so we're talking about over 1.5 billion people. If we extend this water argument to Tibet, the water sources in Tibet are even more strategic than those in Jammu and Kashmir, because the sources of water in Tibet flow from Tibet into Jammu and Kashmir. They flow into various parts of India, and then flow into Bangladesh, into Nepal, into Bhutan, into Cambodia, Vietnam, the Philippines, and most of southern China. So we're talking almost about half the world in terms of population is relying on the water sources that flow out from Tibet, and some of which, important aspects of which, flow into Jammu and Kashmir, and then flow from Jammu and Kashmir into India and Pakistan. So this is something for the world to understand, that if we start being greedy, if we start contesting these water resources, then most of the world will suffer, as it has been suffering. And I think this problem needs to be paid much more attention than the nuclear threat. I don't think the Indians or the Pakistanis will ever have the guts or ever have the rationale or the reasoning to use nuclear weapons, right? I don't think either of India or Pakistan would ever consider that. Okay, so the water problem is something that human beings should be able to relate to, because it's something very, very practical. When you go to Indian cities, if you go to Indian urban centers, or you go to Pakistani urban centers, you will find that the Indians and Pakistanis have been very, very abysmal in the way that they've managed water. So they may be putting a lot of resources in placing security in Jammu and Kashmir, and depriving the local population of a normal life. But it's not done any benefit to India or to Pakistan as far as water management in their own countries are concerned. So I think the world needs to look at it in that sense, and it's also important to know that very few countries in the world have actually done any significant research on water management. North America has, including Canada and the United States. Australia has, Singapore has, and in the Middle East you've got Israel. I mean, for whatever Israel is, if you look at its water management credentials, you will find that it's very, very advanced, and the Israelis have been so advanced that they're even giving consultancy to the Chinese. And the amazing thing is that the Chinese are controlling Tibet, but the Chinese are suffering from the same dilemma as the Indians and Pakistanis, because the Chinese are also very appalling, very abysmal the way that they manage their water. So countries like North America and Europe, the European Union has also very good water management credentials, and so does Australia. So there's a lot that the world can contribute to provide a reasoning to both India and Pakistan, and to China, and to anybody else who wishes to claim this territory, that it's water management. Whoever can manage the water resources of this territory and ensure the people all the way from Pakistan, India, and all those countries I mentioned, to Cambodia, Vietnam, and the south of China, who can ensure that clean drinking water, as well as water for agriculture, gets to all these areas, is something which the world needs to consider, and that is something which will impact human rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where you made a good point, even there, Tanveer, was at the beginning, you know, about the power that Mary has in the USA, or the people in the USA have, and the people in the UK have to do their bit for it. And then the people in AJK and IOK or wherever they are to do their bit for it, because you have the knowledge of your areas. And, you know, this respect for people and the work they do and their perspective and their view. And I know, and I'll let Mary in a minute, I can see her chomping at the bit to speak. You know, where there's so much that's complex about this, but, you know, we foresee a whole global movement that steps up for humanity, you know, those that are, you know, all in the different areas. And, you know, it's the grander vision we had at the beginning, but the step process. And that's something I love about, or I think helps social media, where we've seen the clamping of the press, and it's not out there. It's our new tool. It's our new weapon. And look at us tonight, connecting AJK, USA, and the UK, being shown around the world and having these discussions. People can put up their comments. We're here to listen. And, you know, that was a really good in-depth discussion. Mary, I shall let you in.
Well, I think that what you're saying about the water management and the water problems, I think it really explains why India has almost as many soldiers deployed to Kashmir as exist in the entire active duty United States military, almost as many as Russia has in its entire active duty military. And India has that number deployed in Kashmir, which is the size of the state of Wyoming. I think that explains, for people who don't understand why Kashmir is so important to India, some of those questions of natural resources, not just the water, but the hydroelectric power that is connected to it, and many other agricultural land, tourist assets. I think that those are the things that explain why India has so many soldiers deployed in Kashmir, and why it's so important to India's, why it's so important to India, and why it makes the occupation of Kashmir and the political prisoners two of the most important issues for us to address. You know,
Yes.
is demanding the immediate withdrawal of all Indian forces and the immediate release of all political prisoners. India has no right to be there, and certainly no right to arrest any of its activists, journalists, or youth.
May I take this opportunity? I do have Tanveer's video here that he himself took. Was it about a week, Tanveer, 2 weeks before the lad went across the lock? And you actually had the footage of his home. It's about a minute long. I'm just going to take the liberty of playing that just now, so people can see how close the home was to the line of control, and listen to Tanveer's documentary. Hopefully this will play.
I'm standing just a few meters from the LOC.
Yeah.
You see this greenery just beyond this fire. That is the LOC, and that building that you see there is where Pakistani army soldiers are residing, occupying, and the gate is just beyond this blue tin roof that you're seeing. And all those areas in front of you, those are under Indian control. This is Titri Note, if I haven't mentioned that already. तो मैं अर्ज़ ये कर रहा हूँ कि तितरी नोट का मकाम है ये बिल्कुल आखिर पर है, चंद मीटर के फासले पर वो जो दरख्त हैं सबज़, उसके पीछे जो है वो इंडियन कंट्रोल्ड इलाका है। और ये जो बिल्डिंग है सामने आपकी स्क्रीन के दरमियान में, ये वो जगह है जो आखिरी पाकिस्तानी फ़ौजी यहाँ पे बैठे हुए हैं, गार्ड कर रहे हैं। तो मैंने सोचा कि आप लोगों को आज के इस तजुर्बे का भी आपको बता दूं। यहाँ से आगे पुंछ शहर जो है वो चंद ही किलोमीटर है, 5-6 किलोमीटर अगर मुझे सही याद है। 2008 और 9 में मैं यहाँ से इसी जगह से सफ़र करके गया था।
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
Do we have any time to ask Tanveer about the court case against him? Do we have time for that?
Yes, absolutely. We've got as long as you want.
Tanveer, could you tell us a little bit about the court case that you're out on bail, I understand. If you could tell us about that court case.
Yeah, well, we talked about political prisoners, and it's not until I was in jail for a prolonged period of time. I have been in jail before, but only for matters of days. But on this occasion, it was a matter of months. In fact, 9 months and 29 days. You see, the problem is that with occupations comes ego, and sometimes, if you're a state that has an army, that has a reputation to protect, you're going to get very touchy, and you're going to get very sensitive, about things. When you're in a territory that the local people consider that to be an infringement on them. It's the same with the Indians, and it's the same with the Pakistanis. So the important thing to understand is that there is never any circumstances or any conditions where dialogue cannot take place. And there's never any reason why through dialogue things cannot be resolved. So I spent a whole week before the flag lowering issue erupted. I spent a whole week trying to get the AJK administration and the Pakistani state to come into a dialogue and try to understand local sentiments. But that's not what happened. So because dialogue didn't take place in the manner that it should have, that's the reason why things went from bad to worse. So it becomes like an ego issue. So once they've arrested me, brutally arrested me and beaten me, and then the legal procedure comes under strain because the country, in this case Pakistan, feels that it's a matter of its own dignity and respect. So it bypasses the due procedure. So even if we were to consider that whatever I done was an alleged crime, if we were to consider that to be so, it was a bailable offense. So the fact that I didn't get bail, shows that the ego came in. Now, with reference to me, and more importantly, with reference to those people who are political prisoners and have been for a long time on the Indian control side of Jammu and Kashmir, I've said this before many times that because it's a political problem, and essentially it's a political problem that was created and managed by the outgoing British Empire. And it's not just me saying that. I think this has been said in the British Parliament on many occasions. Now, when we try to get political prisoners released from India, then India also would target us. If we were to get, there are no political prisoners at the moment in this part of Jammu and Kashmir. And they, as far as I know, there are no political prisoners in Gilgit-Baltistan, although they were. And it should be interesting to note that the person Babajan, who was given a 40-year sentence for conducting activism for his people who were victims of an earthquake in his part of Gilgit-Baltistan, he was released from jail without any due procedure. He was in jail, he'd been sentenced to 40 years. And then suddenly, while I was in prison, he was released. And he was released without any due process. It wasn't a court that said that, give him bail or whatever. So I think, things like judiciary, things like parliament, these things have a sense of utility and a sense of credibility. And if they have credibility, then they are functional. But when things like this happen, then courts lose their credibility. If you have a judiciary, that judiciary must be independent. It must not come under the influence of anybody. And unfortunately, the judiciary on the Indian control side, as well as the judiciary on the Pakistani control side, does come under influence. I mean, Afzal Guru was hanged by the Indians, and apparently the judge said that he's been hanged to kind of give some solace to the collective conscience of the Indian people. I mean, is that a reasoning for hanging someone? I dare say, if push came to shove, the Pakistanis would do the same. So these are things which Britain, especially because it created this political problem. I mean, I can go back to records of Hansard, British Parliament in 1935, when people were raising concerns about water. And the British replied that the water is coming down from Jammu and Kashmir, which is ruled by a Maharaja. He's the authority there, and we cannot say anything to him. Exactly the same thing that the British say today when somebody asks them about Kashmir. They say that it's a matter for India and Pakistan. So in 1935, when there was no India and Pakistan in Jammu and Kashmir, the British said that, well, there's a king who's ruling there, and it's his authority on how he wishes to divide and distribute that water. You can look at it. It's in my blog. I can send you a link to that discussion in 1935. So you can't shift the goalposts as it suits you. If the British were concerned about Jammu and Kashmir going into the hands of China or going into the hands of the Soviet Union, then the British were more capable than anybody else to ensure that the Indian and Pakistani armies would not enter in Jammu and Kashmir in 1947, and they would ensure that they would have their own logistics and own army to control the borders of Jammu and Kashmir with China and with the Soviet Union. So the British could have done that by just merely putting up maybe a few thousand soldiers along that border of the northern parts of Jammu and Kashmir. This whole tragedy that we've been seeing playing out since 1947 could have been avoided. So that's why I described the Jammu and Kashmir conflict as a totally needless conflict, and because of this issue of politics or of security agencies on both sides of Jammu and Kashmir affecting the judiciary, I wouldn't have got bail without British intervention. I know the British don't like to publicize these matters too heavily, but they have been involved in intervening in cases where British citizens have been involved or alleged to have been involved in some crime. I mean, for example, there are land disputes, private land disputes take place every day throughout AJK. And, if, for example, there have been cases where a British citizen has come from England to their land in AJK, and people have trespassed their land or tried to drive them away from their land, and people have had to shoot in self-defense, right? So those people, those British citizens shooting in self-defense and going to prison here in AJK, the British would intervene and ensure that they get out of jail because they were acting purely in self-defense. And if the case went through the courts here, they would probably spend 20 years in jail before the judges realized that no, he shot those trespassers in self-defense. So the judicial system here is very, very weak. And I think Britain should take responsibility. I mean, Yasin Malik being in jail, okay, it's the Indians who've jailed him. right? But it's the British and the Americans who assured Yassin Malik in the 1990s that if you adopt a non-violent methodology to raise your struggle for rights, then then the world will listen to you, and the world will also practically assist you. So,
Tanveer, can I just come in there?
Yeah.
I was going to say we could talk all night. We really could. What I really like within everything that you say in there is this, how it's all interconnected. We're doing this program here, insights into Indian occupied Kashmir, but it's not isolated. It's not just India in Kashmir doing this. The whole thing is so encompassing, all encompassing of all of us, which makes it so complex, but also makes it ideal to explore all the different correlations. I mean, what I would like to do one day, if we're looking at political prisoners, or we're looking at Yassin Malik and that knowledge you have, I mean, I've learned myself along the way. I was like this man that was a political voice, invited to a big international conclave event, I think 2008, allowed up on the stage, and then now he's in jail accused of something he did 30 years ago. After all this, there's so much ludicrous events in all this, and so it's a great opportunity for us to discuss these insights. But I think we'll probably need to bring that one to a close there for tonight. I think we might have been chatting for an hour, and like I say, we could talk all night, but I really appreciate all that angle on it. If I pop to Mary, and then we'll come back to you.
Can I just mention one thing?
Yeah, please do.
Is that so the world needs to realize that it's a very elaborate puzzle. Yeah, Jammu and Kashmir is a very elaborate puzzle. There are 5 countries that people need to bear in mind. I'm not accusing those 5 countries. I'm just saying the fact is that these following 5 countries are instrumental or are engaged in some sort of way in whatever the problem Jammu and Kashmir has today. Yeah, those countries are namely India, Pakistan, China, Britain, and the United States of America. These 5 countries, I'm not blaming any of them, right? I'm not pointing the finger. I'm just saying that these 5 countries are instrumental in whatever the conditions are today. And I would like one representative from each of those 5 countries to be able to come onto one platform and to speak in an equally fair manner, to give the same exact proportion of time to each representative of those 5 countries, and to try and fit that program into a 1-hour program. And I think that the whole world will find that discussion to be very, very illuminating.
I would add Israel and Dubai because of the new arrangement. And I actually am pointing the finger. I think that they are all extremely culpable and criminally responsible for the crimes, the really monstrous crimes being committed against the Kashmiri people. I don't think they should be let off the hook. They are actively engaged in supporting India in this occupation, and really heartbreaking crimes against the Kashmiri people, heartbreaking suffering. So yes, I don't think we should pull our punches on that at all. And I would include Israel, which arms and trains forces for Kashmir, and Dubai, which now is trying to profit off of the tourist industry. It's like feeding off the corpses of Kashmiri children. So no, I don't think we should pull our punches, Tanveer.
Well said, Mary, who pulls no punches. Good for you. Mary, is there any one last thing you would like to make a comment to Tanveer, and then we'll give Tanveer. It's
lovely meeting you, Tanveer.
It's been really interesting, Tanveer. The time's gone so quickly. It's been, and my mind's gone off on all different angles. I've got so many things I now want to go and research, look at, people to talk to. I'm going to give the last word to you, Tanveer. So over to you to, I know you've said there what you would like to see. Is there any other message, please, out there for Kashmiri supporters, those raising awareness, those standing in solidarity, something positive for us?
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, the motivation for anybody engaged in this kind is to be humanitarian. You must look for humanitarian output, something that positively improves the lives of people here, that decreases the restrictions upon them. So anything that can bring results in the shape of a decrease of human rights violation and an increase in liberty and in freedom will take us on that journey. And it's important to take account of all the various interests. It's important to take account of all the various narratives that are circulating throughout this territory, and try not to isolate this problem as being just a problem between Delhi and Srinagar. It's a problem involving many other capitals of the world, and even more than the ones that I mentioned. So it's not just Delhi and Islamabad and Srinagar and Muzaffarabad. It's Beijing, it's London, it's Washington, and maybe Tel Aviv, and maybe Dubai, as you've mentioned, and maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe Iran. When you go into this in different layers, the mind boggles.
Absolutely. And I can remember from our, global solidarity event, which was probably about 18 months ago, that was something you said about the Let Kashmir Decide slogan or platform, that it was an opportunity for people of many narratives to come together, and we've taken that forward from there with Mary, the idea for the Red for Kashmir campaign with Mary, where that united so many people as well, and carrying this forward. So it's an honor and a pleasure to still be here, 18 months later, still discussing like this and having further to go on. And as you say, that respect, fundamentally respect for other people's opinions. We have the right for freedom of voice. We should have the right for freedom of voice, civil liberties, justice, and human rights, and coming together. Mary, it's just reminded me, sorry, you were talking about the human rights mandate earlier that Let Kashmir Decide have issued and released, and it was about those first main steps being about decolonization and a demilitarization of the area, the release of the prisoners, and looking at withdrawing the line of control and going for self-determination, and feeling, Tanveer, that was something that everybody could then get behind, regardless of the narratives. And, I kind of like to feel that democratic Indians, if it was democratic government, would also, don't we all want to live in peace? Don't we all want to? But then, as you discussed, the economy, the money, and it's not that easy. But that's something we're trying to unite around and get endorsements from people to build that forward. Okay, well, thank you both, and everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for so much of your comments. I can see we've had lots of viewers, which has been brilliant. We look forward to seeing you again next week, and hopefully we'll look forward to seeing Tanveer back with us again another time as well. So thank you so much to everybody, and we'll see you again. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you,
Thank you very
Tanveer.
much.
Thank you.